Elena Rodriguez had always been different from other kids in her neighborhood. While her friends spent afternoons playing video games or scrolling through social media, she found herself drawn to precision and focus. Her father, a retired military veteran, noticed this trait early on when she would spend hours carefully arranging her toy soldiers in perfect formations or hitting every target in carnival games with remarkable accuracy. The local shooting range was not the kind of place most 17-year-old girls frequented, especially not in the rough industrial district where Elena lived with her single father. The building looked more like an abandoned warehouse than a legitimate business, with its faded paint and rusty metal siding. But inside it housed some of the most advanced training equipment in the state, attracting serious marksmen from hundreds of miles away. Elena had been coming to the range for 3 years now, ever since her father decided she needed to learn proper firearm safety and handling. What started as basic lessons had evolved into something much more significant. She possessed a natural talent that even seasoned instructors struggled to explain. Her breathing control was flawless, her stance was textbook perfect, and her ability to calculate wind resistance and bullet drops seemed almost supernatural. The other regulars at the range had initially been skeptical of the young woman who showed up every weekend with her worn-out backpack and determined expression. Shooting sports were traditionally dominated by older men who had spent decades perfecting their craft. They whispered among themselves about the teenager who dared to occupy lanes alongside veterans and professional competitors. Marcus Scope Davidson was one of those veterans. A former Army sniper with multiple tours in Afghanistan, he had earned his nickname through legendary precision shots that had saved countless lives during his military service. After returning to civilian life, he made his living as a private firearms instructor for law enforcement agencies and wealthy clients who wanted elite-level training. Scope was known for his arrogance as much as his skill. He had never met a shooter he could not outperform, and he made sure everyone knew it. His custom rifle setup cost more than most people's cars, featuring the latest in optics technology and precision engineering. He treated the shooting range like his personal domain, often making snide comments about other shooters' techniques and equipment. The tension between Elena and Scope had been building for months. Every weekend, they would end up on adjacent lanes, their contrasting styles creating an unspoken rivalry. Elena used her father's old hunting rifle, a weapon that Scope dismissed as outdated and inadequate. Yet week after week, her targets showed groupings that matched or exceeded his expensive equipment's performance. Other range members began to notice the growing friction. Elena never responded to Scope's condescending remarks about her equipment or technique, but her jaw would tighten slightly, and her next shots would somehow become even more precise. She had learned early in life that actions spoke louder than words, and she preferred to let her marksmanship do the talking. The range's owner, Old Pete, had been running the facility for over 30 years. He had seen countless shooters come and go, from nervous beginners to world-class competitors. In all his years, he had rarely witnessed the kind of natural talent that Elena displayed. More importantly, he recognized the brewing conflict between his two most skilled regular customers. Elena's father, Roberto, worried about his daughter's obsession with shooting. While he was proud of her abilities, he feared that her dedication came at the expense of normal teenage experiences. She rarely socialized with classmates, preferring to spend her free time practicing dry fire exercises in their basement or studying ballistics manuals. Her bedroom walls were covered with shooting competition posters and trajectory charts rather than typical teenage decorations. At school, Elena kept her shooting hobby private. Her classmates knew her as a quiet, studious girl who excelled in mathematics and physics. They had no idea that she spent her weekends competing against some of the region's most experienced marksmen. This double life sometimes left her feeling isolated, caught between two worlds where she never quite fit in completely. The local shooting community was small and tightly knit. Word traveled fast about exceptional performances, and Elena's reputation was growing beyond the confines of her home range. Several competition organizers had approached her about entering formal matches, but she always declined. She shot for personal satisfaction, not for trophies or recognition. Scope, meanwhile, thrived on attention and accolades. His social media accounts were filled with photos of his equipment, competition victories, and instructional videos that had garnered thousands of followers. He viewed shooting as both his profession and his identity, and he could not tolerate the idea of being upstaged by an amateur teenager with inferior equipment. The other range regulars began taking sides in the unspoken competition. Some admired Elena's humble approach and natural talent, while others respected Scope's proven military background and technical expertise. The weekly encounters between the two shooters had become an unofficial entertainment for the range community. Elena's shooting sessions followed a strict routine. She would arrive early, set up her equipment methodically, and begin with basic accuracy drills before progressing to more challenging scenarios. Her focus was absolute during shooting, blocking out all distractions and commentary from other lanes. This concentration had become her trademark, earning her quiet respect from serious shooters who recognized the mental discipline required for consistent precision. The stage was set for a confrontation that would forever change the dynamics of the shooting range. Elena's quiet confidence continued to grow with each successful session, while Scope's frustration mounted as he struggled to understand how someone with such basic equipment could consistently match his performance. The unspoken rivalry was approaching a breaking point, and everyone at the range could sense that something significant was about to happen. Neither Elena nor Scope realized that their next encounter would become the stuff of local legend, talked about for years to come by anyone who witnessed what was about to unfold. The weekend was approaching, and both shooters were preparing for what would become the most memorable day in the range's long history. Saturday morning arrived with an unusual energy at the shooting range. The regular crowd was larger than normal, as word had spread through the local shooting community about the ongoing tension between Elena and Scope. Some came to witness what they sensed might be a decisive encounter, while others simply enjoyed the competitive atmosphere that had developed over recent weeks. Elena arrived at her usual time, carrying her father's rifle case and a small bag of ammunition she had carefully hand-loaded the night before. She had spent extra time preparing her rounds, measuring powder charges to the tenth of a grain and selecting only the most perfectly uniform bullets. Her father had taught her that consistency in ammunition was just as important as consistency in technique. Scope pulled into the parking lot in his expensive pickup truck, which was adorned with military veteran decals and shooting sport sponsor stickers. His rifle case was a custom-fitted aluminum container that cost more than most people spent on their entire shooting setup. He made a show of carefully removing his equipment, ensuring that other rangegoers noticed the precision-machined components and high-end optics. Old Pete watched from behind the counter as his two most talked-about customers prepared for what felt like a showdown. He had been in this business long enough to recognize when tensions were reaching a critical point. The other shooters seemed to sense it too, as conversations became quieter and more attention was focused on lanes 7 and 8, where Elena and Scope typically set up. The morning started normally enough. Elena began her routine with basic accuracy exercises at 50 yards, placing shot after shot into increasingly smaller target zones. Her movements were efficient and practiced, with no wasted motion or unnecessary adjustments. She had developed a rhythm over the years that allowed her to maintain peak concentration for extended periods. At the neighboring lane, Scope was conducting his own warm-up routine, but with considerably more fanfare. He made loud comments about his equipment upgrades and recent competition victories, ensuring that his voice carried to the surrounding lanes. Several newer shooters gathered around to observe his technique and ask questions about his military experience. Elena remained focused on her own shooting, but the constant commentary was beginning to wear on her concentration. She prided herself on being able to block out distractions, but Scope's increasingly loud and boastful behavior was testing her mental discipline. Her jaw tightened slightly as she loaded her next round, a telltale sign that her patience was being strained. The first direct confrontation came when Scope made a comment about real shooters using professional equipment. He gestured dismissively toward Elena's setup while explaining to his audience why expensive optics and custom rifles were essential for serious marksmanship. The comment was clearly intended for Elena to hear. Though he maintained the pretense of speaking to his admirers, Elena said nothing. But her next 5 shots landed in a group so tight that they appeared to form a single enlarged hole in the target. Several nearby shooters stopped their own activities to observe the remarkable display of precision. The message was clear without words being spoken. Professional equipment was not always necessary for professional results. Scope noticed the attention Elena's shooting had attracted and felt compelled to demonstrate his own abilities. He moved to the 100-yard line and began engaging smaller targets with rapid precision. His military training was evident in his smooth bolt manipulation and consistent shooting position. The shots were undeniably impressive, showcasing the skills that had made him legendary during his service years. The unofficial competition escalated throughout the morning. Each shooter seemed determined to outperform the other, pushing their abilities to higher levels. Elena moved to increasingly difficult shooting positions, demonstrating her versatility by shooting from kneeling, sitting, and even prone positions on the concrete floor. Her accuracy remained consistent regardless of the position, a testament to her fundamental shooting skills. Scope responded by engaging targets at maximum range, using his high-powered scope to reach out to distances that challenged even his considerable abilities. His shots were methodical and calculated, each one carefully planned and executed with the precision that had made him a respected sniper. The gathered observers were witnessing a masterclass in marksmanship from two very different but equally skilled shooters. Old Pete found himself caught between admiration and concern. The shooting was absolutely spectacular, representing some of the finest marksmanship he had ever witnessed at his facility. However, the underlying tension was palpable, and he worried about where the escalating competition might lead. He had seen rivalries turn ugly before, and he valued the peaceful atmosphere that usually characterized his range. Other range members began placing informal bets on who would eventually prove superior. The older military veterans tended to support Scope, respecting his proven combat record and professional credentials. Younger shooters and those who appreciated natural talent over expensive equipment found themselves rooting for Elena. The divide created an electric atmosphere that was both exciting and potentially volatile. Elena's father arrived for his weekly shooting session to find the range buzzing with unusual activity. Roberto immediately recognized the source of the tension and felt a mixture of pride and worry as he watched his daughter's performance. He knew better than anyone how dedicated she had become to her shooting, sometimes at the expense of other aspects of her life. The competition continued to intensify as both shooters pushed beyond their normal limits. Elena began attempting shots that she had only dreamed of trying, while Scope dug deep into his reservoir of military experience to demonstrate techniques he rarely used in civilian settings. The quality of shooting being displayed was reaching levels that some observers had never seen outside of professional competitions. As the morning progressed, it became clear that this was no ordinary day at the shooting range. The informal rivalry had evolved into something approaching a formal challenge, with an audience that was growing larger and more invested in the outcome. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would test not only marksmanship skills, but also the character and determination of both participants. The tension continued to build as each successful shot raised the stakes higher. Elena maintained her characteristic calm demeanor, but those who knew her could see the intense focus in her eyes. Scope's confidence appeared unshaken, but his comments were becoming more pointed and his demonstrations more elaborate. Something significant was about to happen, and everyone present could feel the anticipation building toward an inevitable climax. The pivotal moment arrived just after noon when the range was at its busiest. Elena had been shooting consistently for 3 hours, her groups maintaining remarkable precision despite the extended session. Her concentration seemed unbreakable, each shot flowing naturally from careful preparation to smooth execution. The observers had begun to whisper among themselves about the sustained level of accuracy they were witnessing. Scope had been growing increasingly frustrated as his attempts to intimidate or distract Elena proved ineffective. His own shooting was exemplary by any reasonable standard, but Elena's quiet consistency was beginning to make his elaborate display seem almost theatrical by comparison. The gathered crowd was clearly impressed by both shooters, but Elena's humble approach was winning admirers even among those who had initially favored the experienced veteran. The confrontation began when Scope decided to make a direct challenge. Walking over to Elena's lane during a pause in her shooting, he examined her target with exaggerated interest. The paper showed a series of groups that would have been impressive from any shooter, but from someone using basic equipment they bordered on remarkable. Scope studied the holes with a mixture of genuine surprise and growing irritation. Not bad for factory ammunition and a hunting rifle, Scope said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. His tone carried a clear implication that Elena's equipment was holding her back from achieving truly professional results. You might actually have some potential if you upgraded to serious gear. The comment was designed to be patronizing while maintaining a veneer of constructive criticism. Elena looked up from loading her rifle, meeting Scope's gaze for the first time that day. Her expression remained calm, but something in her eyes suggested that his comment had crossed a line. She had endured months of indirect criticism and condescending remarks, but this direct challenge demanded a response. The surrounding shooters sensed the shift in atmosphere and began paying closer attention to the exchange. Equipment doesn't make the shooter, Elena replied simply, her voice carrying clearly despite its quiet tone. Skill and dedication matter more than expensive toys. Her words were respectful but firm, challenging Scope's implication without being confrontational. She turned back to her rifle, apparently dismissing the conversation as finished. Scope's face flushed slightly at being dismissed so casually by someone he considered an amateur. His military background had taught him to respect hierarchy and experience, and Elena's confident response suggested she did not acknowledge his superior credentials. The gathered observers watched with growing interest as the verbal sparring appeared to be escalating toward something more significant. Experience matters too, Scope responded, his voice taking on a harder edge. There's a difference between range shooting and real-world application. Some of us have proven ourselves under pressure. His reference to his military service was unmistakable, designed to emphasize the gap in their backgrounds and experience levels. Elena paused in her preparation, considering her response carefully. She understood that Scope was trying to provoke her into an emotional reaction that might affect her shooting performance. However, his continued challenges were testing her patience and threatening to disrupt the peaceful environment she valued at the range. The time had come to address the situation directly. Would you like to settle this with a shooting contest? Elena asked, turning to face Scope fully. Her voice remained calm, but there was an unmistakable note of challenge in her words. Since you seem to think equipment and experience are so important, perhaps we should let our shooting speak for itself. The suggestion sent a ripple of excitement through the gathered crowd. Scope's eyes lit up with anticipation. This was exactly what he had been hoping to provoke, an opportunity to demonstrate his superiority in a formal comparison. He was confident that his professional equipment and military training would give him a decisive advantage in any structured competition. The chance to put Elena in her place while entertaining an audience was too appealing to resist. I'd be happy to give you a shooting lesson, Scope replied with a smirk that conveyed his confidence in the outcome. What kind of contest did you have in mind? I should warn you that I don't believe in going easy on opponents, regardless of their age or experience level. His tone suggested that he considered the result a foregone conclusion. Old Pete emerged from behind the counter, recognizing that the situation was moving beyond simple rivalry into potentially dangerous territory. While he appreciated the business that competitive shooting brought to his range, he was concerned about maintaining the safe and respectful atmosphere that was essential to his operation. Formal challenges between customers could quickly spiral out of control if not properly managed. If you two are serious about this, we need to establish clear rules and safety protocols, Pete announced, his authoritative voice cutting through the excited chatter of the spectators. This is still a business establishment, not the Wild West. Any contest will be conducted according to proper shooting sport guidelines. His intervention helped formalize the situation while maintaining necessary safety standards. Elena appreciated Pete's involvement, as it ensured that any competition would be fair and properly supervised. She had no desire to participate in an ego-driven display that prioritized showmanship over genuine marksmanship. Her goal was simply to demonstrate that skill and dedication could overcome expensive equipment and boastful attitudes. The crowd began suggesting various contest formats, ranging from simple accuracy challenges to complex scenario-based shooting exercises. Scope favored tests that would showcase his military experience and advanced equipment, while Elena's supporters pushed for basic accuracy measurements that would level the playing field. The debate over format became almost as intense as the underlying rivalry itself. Roberto arrived at his daughter's lane just as the discussion was reaching its peak. He immediately understood what was happening and felt a mixture of pride and concern. While he was confident in Elena's abilities, he worried about the pressure of performing in front of a hostile audience and the potential consequences of either winning or losing against someone with Scope's reputation and ego. "Elena," Roberto said quietly, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Your shooting speaks for itself." His words were intended to remind her that she had nothing to gain from this confrontation and potentially much to lose. He knew his daughter's competitive nature, but also understood the risks involved. Elena looked at her father with understanding and gratitude, recognizing his concern for her well-being. However, months of accumulated frustration and provocation had brought her to a point where backing down felt impossible. She had worked too hard and come too far to allow someone else's arrogance to diminish her achievements or drive her away from the range she considered her second home. "I know, Papa," Elena replied softly, "but sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in. This isn't about proving anything to him. It's about proving something to myself." Her words carried a maturity and determination that surprised even those who knew her well. The moment had become about more than just shooting. It had become about respect, integrity, and the courage to face challenges head-on. The contest rules were finally established after extensive debate among the gathered shooters. Old Pete insisted on maintaining control over the format to ensure fairness and safety. The challenge would consist of 3 stages: a precision round at 100 yards, a rapid-fire accuracy test at 50 yards, and a final long-range shot at the maximum distance the range allowed, which was 300 yards. Each stage would be scored independently, with points awarded for accuracy and consistency. The scoring system was designed to minimize the advantages that expensive equipment might provide, while still allowing both shooters to demonstrate their full range of skills. Pete appointed 3 experienced range members as judges to ensure impartial evaluation of the results. Elena spent the preparation time checking her rifle and ammunition with extra care. She selected her most consistent rounds from the batch she had hand-loaded, examining each cartridge for signs of imperfection. Her father assisted quietly, offering encouragement while avoiding any advice that might be construed as coaching. Their bond was evident in their wordless communication and mutual trust. Scope used the preparation time to adjust his rifle's optics and explain his equipment to the gathered spectators. His rifle was a custom-built precision instrument with a price tag that exceeded many people's annual income. The scope alone featured the latest in digital enhancement technology, with ballistic calculators and environmental sensors that could compensate for wind, temperature, and humidity variations. The contrast between the 2 setups was striking. Elena's rifle was a well-maintained but obviously older hunting rifle that her father had purchased used many years earlier. The scope was a basic model without the electronic features that Scope's equipment boasted. However, the rifle showed signs of careful maintenance and modification that suggested deep familiarity and respect for the instrument. Word of the contest had spread throughout the local shooting community, and additional spectators continued to arrive as the afternoon progressed. Some came from other ranges, drawn by reports of an exceptional challenge between a rising talent and an established expert. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and friendly betting on the outcome. The first stage began with Scope taking the initial turn, confident that his professional equipment and training would establish an early lead. He settled into his shooting position with practiced efficiency, his movements showing the muscle memory of thousands of hours of training. The rifle seemed to become an extension of his body as he aligned the crosshairs and controlled his breathing. Scope's first shot struck the target with a satisfying ring of metal on paper. The judges examined the result through spotting scopes, confirming a hit very close to the bullseye. His remaining 4 shots followed in steady succession, each one finding its mark with mechanical precision. The final group measured just over 1 inch, an excellent result by any standard. Elena stepped to the firing line as Scope's supporters offered congratulations on his impressive performance. The pressure was immediately apparent, as she now faced the challenge of matching or exceeding a score that would have won most shooting competitions. She settled into her position with the same methodical approach she had used for years, blocking out the noise and distraction of the crowd. Her breathing pattern became deep and regular as she aligned her rifle with the distant target. Elena had learned to use her heartbeat as a timing mechanism, releasing each shot during the natural pause between heartbeats when her body was most stable. This technique required patience and discipline but produced remarkable consistency. For those who mastered it, Elena's first shot produced a hole that appeared to be slightly closer to the center than Scope's best effort. The crowd murmured its appreciation as she smoothly worked the bolt and prepared for her second shot. Her concentration was absolute, as if the dozens of spectators and their expectations had simply ceased to exist in her awareness. Shot after shot, Elena's bullets found their way to the target with a precision that seemed to defy the limitations of her equipment. Her final group measured significantly smaller than Scope's, despite the theoretical advantages his expensive setup should have provided. The judges confirmed the measurements multiple times before announcing Elena's victory in the first stage. Scope's confidence wavered slightly as he processed the unexpected result. He had been certain that his superior equipment would provide a decisive advantage, particularly in a precision shooting contest. Elena's victory suggested that his assumptions about the importance of gear might have been mistaken, a possibility that challenged his fundamental beliefs about marksmanship. The second stage focused on rapid-fire accuracy, a discipline that seemed to favor Scope's military training and experience. The challenge required 5 shots in 30 seconds while maintaining reasonable accuracy standards. This type of shooting demanded different skills than pure precision work, emphasizing muscle memory, equipment familiarity, and stress management under time pressure. Scope approached the rapid-fire stage with renewed confidence, knowing that his military background had included extensive training in quick engagement scenarios. His bolt manipulation was smooth and efficient, honed by years of practice under combat conditions. The shots came in steady rhythm, each one carefully aimed despite the time constraints. Elena faced a significant challenge in the rapid-fire stage, as her methodical approach seemed ill-suited to the time pressure involved. However, she had been practicing quick shooting drills in preparation for potential hunting scenarios where second shots might be necessary. Her technique was different from Scope's but no less effective in its own way. The rapid-fire results were closer than the precision round, with Scope managing a narrow victory through his superior speed and acceptable accuracy. Elena's shots were more precisely placed, but she struggled to maintain her usual pace under the artificial time constraints. The stage results left the overall contest tied, with everything depending on the final long-range challenge. The 300-yard final stage would test both shooters at the limits of their abilities and equipment. At that distance, factors like wind reading, bullet trajectory calculation, and environmental conditions became crucial elements that could determine success or failure. Both competitors would need to demonstrate the full range of their marksmanship skills to achieve victory. Elena studied the wind conditions carefully, watching the grass and trees for signs of air movement that might affect her bullet's path. She had learned to read natural wind indicators from her father, who had been an accomplished hunter before introducing his daughter to competitive shooting. The afternoon breeze was light but variable, adding complexity to an already challenging shot. Scope consulted his electronic ballistic calculator, inputting data about wind speed, temperature, and humidity. His Scope's computer would provide precise aiming corrections based on the environmental readings and ballistic characteristics of his ammunition. The technology represented the cutting edge of shooting aids, designed to eliminate human error from trajectory calculations. The final stage was about to begin, and the tension among the spectators was palpable. Both shooters had demonstrated exceptional abilities in the previous stages, making the outcome of the contest impossible to predict. Elena's surprising success in the precision round had shaken Scope's confidence, while his victory in the rapid-fire stage had reminded everyone of his professional credentials and experience. The afternoon sun was beginning to cast longer shadows across the range as the final stage preparations commenced. 300 yards represented the maximum distance available at Old Pete's facility, and the targets appeared as small white squares barely visible to the naked eye. Both shooters would need to rely heavily on their optics and shooting fundamentals to achieve success at this challenging distance. Scope took his position first, adjusting his expensive bipod and settling behind his high-powered scope. The electronic ballistic computer displayed precise aiming corrections on a small screen mounted near his eyepiece. Environmental sensors fed real-time data about wind speed, temperature, and barometric pressure into the system, providing calculations that would have taken human shooters considerable time and experience to develop. The crowd had grown larger as word of the contest spread through the local shooting community. Spectators lined the observation area behind the firing line, many using binoculars and spotting scopes to observe the distant targets. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation, as everyone understood they were witnessing something special that would be discussed for years to come. Elena prepared for her turn by studying the natural wind indicators she had learned to read from her father. Small movements in the grass, the behavior of leaves on distant trees, and even the feel of air currents on her face provided information about the atmospheric conditions that would affect her bullet's flight. Her approach was intuitive and traditional, relying on experience rather than electronic assistance. Scope's concentration was evident as he aligned his crosshairs with the distant target. His breathing became controlled and rhythmic, following the patterns he had learned during sniper training. The first shot broke cleanly, and the bullet's impact was visible through the high-powered spotting scopes used by the judges. The hit was good, though not perfectly centered. Shot after shot, Scope demonstrated the steady competence that had made him a respected marksman. His groups were consistent and well-placed, showing the benefits of professional training and high-quality equipment. The electronic ballistic computer was performing flawlessly, providing corrections that kept his shots close to the intended point of impact, despite the challenging distance. When Scope completed his string, the judges measured his group and announced the results. His shooting had been solid and professional, exactly what most observers had expected from someone with his background and equipment. The measurements represented excellent marksmanship that would have been competitive in formal long-range shooting competitions. Elena approached the firing line with her characteristic calm demeanor, though those who knew her well could see the intense focus in her eyes. The pressure was enormous as she needed to not only match Scope's performance but exceed it to win the overall contest. Her father's old rifle seemed almost primitive compared to the high-tech equipment her opponent had used. She settled into her shooting position with the methodical approach that had become her trademark. Elena's stance was textbook perfect, developed through countless hours of practice and refined by her father's patient instruction. Her breathing pattern became deep and regular as she prepared for the most important shots of her competitive shooting career. Through her basic scope, the target appeared much smaller and less defined than it would have through Scope's advanced optics. Elena compensated by using her natural ability to judge distances and wind conditions, skills that had been developed through practical experience rather than electronic assistance. Her first shot required careful calculation of bullet drop and wind drift. The shot broke with smooth precision, and Elena worked the bolt to chamber her next round without taking her eye from the scope. Her rhythm was steady and unhurried, each shot flowing naturally from careful preparation to confident execution. The technique was fundamentally sound, relying on consistency and patience rather than speed or technological advantages. As Elena continued her string, something remarkable began to happen. Despite the limitations of her equipment, her shots were grouping more tightly than Scope's had been. Each bullet seemed to find its way to nearly the same point of impact, creating a cluster that impressed even the most experienced observers. Her natural shooting ability was overcoming the theoretical advantages of expensive gear. The crowd's reaction became more subdued as they realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Elena's performance was challenging fundamental assumptions about the relationship between equipment quality and shooting success. Her humble approach and basic gear were producing results that matched or exceeded those achieved with professional-grade equipment. Roberto watched his daughter's performance with a mixture of pride and amazement. He had taught Elena the fundamentals of marksmanship, but her natural talent had carried her far beyond anything he had imagined possible. Her dedication and practice were paying dividends in this high-pressure situation, demonstrating the value of consistent effort and proper technique. Old Pete found himself genuinely impressed by both shooters' performances. The contest had showcased exceptional marksmanship from two very different approaches to the sport. Scope's professional methodology and advanced equipment represented one path to excellence, while Elena's natural talent and traditional techniques demonstrated an alternative route to similar results. When Elena completed her final shot, the range fell silent as everyone waited for the judges to measure and announce the results. The tension was palpable, as the outcome would determine not only the contest winner but also validate one of two competing philosophies about marksmanship. The measurements would settle the debate between equipment and skill, experience and natural talent. The judges took their time with the measurements, using precision instruments to determine the exact size and placement of Elena's group. Their deliberate approach only heightened the suspense, as spectators strained to see the target and interpret the official's expressions. Even the judges seemed surprised by what they were measuring. Scope waited for the announcement with visible tension, his earlier confidence replaced by genuine uncertainty about the outcome. Elena's shooting had been far more impressive than he had anticipated, forcing him to reconsider his assumptions about amateur shooters and basic equipment. The contest had become much closer than he had expected. Elena remained calm during the measurement process, though her heart was racing with anticipation. Regardless of the outcome, she had proven to herself that she belonged among serious competitive shooters. The experience had tested her abilities under pressure and demonstrated that her years of dedicated practice had prepared her for significant challenges. The moment of truth was approaching as the judges completed their work and prepared to announce the final results. The contest had exceeded everyone's expectations, providing entertainment, education, and genuine surprise about the capabilities of both participants. Whatever the outcome, both shooters had earned respect for their exceptional performances under pressure. The atmosphere was electric as old Pete stepped forward to receive the judges' official measurements and announce the winner of what had become the most memorable shooting contest in the range's long history. Every person present understood they had witnessed something special that would be remembered and discussed long after the targets were taken down and the rifles put away. Old Pete stepped forward with the official measurements in his weathered hands, his expression revealing nothing about the results. The entire range had fallen into an unusual silence, with even the most talkative spectators holding their breath in anticipation. Decades of running the facility had taught Pete to appreciate dramatic moments, and he understood the significance of this particular announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pete began, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed range. "In all my years running this facility, I've rarely seen shooting of this caliber from anyone, let alone in a head-to-head competition. Both contestants have demonstrated exceptional marksmanship that would be competitive in professional tournaments." His words built suspense while acknowledging the quality of the performance. Scope stood with his arms crossed, trying to project confidence despite the growing uncertainty he felt about the outcome. His military bearing remained intact, but those who knew him well could see signs of tension in his posture. The contest had not unfolded according to his expectations, and Elena's surprising competence had forced him to confront uncomfortable questions about his own assumptions. Elena maintained her characteristic composure, though her father could see the intensity behind her calm exterior. Roberto had watched his daughter handle pressure situations before, but never with so much at stake in terms of reputation and respect within the shooting community. Her performance had already exceeded his expectations, regardless of the final outcome. The first stage, precision shooting at 100 yards, Pete continued consulting his notes. Elena Rodriguez achieved a group measurement of 0.78 inches. Marcus Davidson's group measured 1.04 inches. Elena wins the first stage. A murmur of appreciation ran through the crowd, acknowledging the exceptional accuracy both shooters had demonstrated. The second stage, rapid-fire accuracy at 50 yards. Marcus Davidson completed his string in 26 seconds with a group measuring 2.15 inches. Elena Rodriguez finished in 29 seconds with a group measuring 1.93 inches. Due to the scoring system that balances speed and accuracy, Marcus wins the second stage. The announcement confirmed that the contest remained extremely close. The tension was reaching its peak as Pete prepared to announce the results of the decisive final stage. Every person present understood that the 300-yard results would determine not only the contest winner but also settle a fundamental debate about the relative importance of equipment versus skill in precision shooting. The third and final stage, long-range precision at 300 yards, Pete announced, pausing for effect. Marcus Davidson achieved a 5-shot group measuring 2.87 inches. An excellent performance that demonstrates professional-level marksmanship. Scope's supporters nodded approvingly, recognizing that such accuracy at long range represented exceptional shooting. Elena felt her heart racing as she waited for her results to be announced. She had given her absolute best effort in the final stage, pushing her abilities and equipment to their limits. The outcome would either validate years of dedicated practice or serve as a humbling reminder that equipment and experience carried advantages that natural talent alone could not overcome. Elena Rodriguez, Pete continued, building the suspense with his measured delivery, achieved a 5-shot group measuring 2.01 inches. The announcement sent a shockwave through the assembled crowd. Elena had not only matched Scope's performance but had significantly exceeded it, accomplishing something that seemed almost impossible given her equipment limitations. The silence that followed the announcement was profound and telling. Spectators struggled to process what they had just heard, while Scope stood frozen in disbelief. Elena had won the contest decisively, proving that skill, dedication, and natural talent could overcome significant equipment disadvantages when properly developed and applied. Elena's supporters erupted in cheers and applause, while even Scope's backers found themselves admiring the remarkable achievement they had witnessed. The young woman with the basic hunting rifle had outshot a military-trained professional, using equipment worth tens of thousands of dollars. The result challenged conventional wisdom about competitive shooting. Roberto embraced his daughter with obvious pride, tears forming in his eyes as he recognized the magnitude of her accomplishment. Elena had proven herself against the most challenging opposition under intense pressure, demonstrating maturity and skill that exceeded even his considerable expectations. The moment validated years of patient instruction and unwavering support. Scope stared at the target in stunned silence, struggling to accept what had happened. His entire identity was built around his reputation as a superior marksman, and Elena's victory threatened to undermine everything he believed about shooting sports. The defeat was particularly difficult because it had come at the hands of someone he had dismissed as an amateur with inadequate equipment. Elena approached Scope with characteristic grace, extending her hand in a gesture of respect and sportsmanship. "Thank you for an excellent competition," she said sincerely. "Your shooting was outstanding, and you pushed me to perform better than I thought possible." Her words demonstrated the maturity and class that had impressed observers throughout the contest. For a moment, Scope hesitated, his pride warring with his ingrained sense of military courtesy. Then he accepted Elena's handshake, recognizing that she had earned his respect through superior performance under pressure. "You shot well," he admitted grudgingly. "I underestimated you." The admission was difficult but necessary, marking the beginning of a fundamental shift in his perspective. The crowd began to disperse as the immediate excitement of the contest conclusion faded, but the conversations continued with animated discussions about what they had witnessed. Elena's victory would become part of shooting range folklore, a story that would be retold whenever discussions turned to the relative importance of equipment versus skill in competitive shooting. Old Pete approached Elena with genuine admiration in his expression. "Young lady, in 30 years of running this range, I've never seen shooting like what you demonstrated today. You've got a gift that shouldn't be wasted on weekend practice sessions. Have you ever considered competitive shooting seriously?" His suggestion opened possibilities that Elena had never seriously contemplated. Elena looked at her father, seeing encouragement and support in his eyes. The contest had revealed capabilities that even she had not fully recognized, suggesting that her shooting journey was far from complete. The victory over Scope had given her confidence to consider challenges and opportunities that had previously seemed beyond her reach. The immediate aftermath of the contest was marked by congratulations, analysis, and planning for the future. Elena had won more than just a shooting competition. She had earned respect, opened doors, and discovered new possibilities for her remarkable talents. The young woman who had arrived that morning as a weekend range regular was leaving as a recognized shooting prodigy with unlimited potential. Scope gathered his equipment with methodical precision, his movements reflecting deep thought about the lessons learned from this unexpected defeat. The experience had been humbling but educational, forcing him to reconsider fundamental assumptions about marksmanship and respect for other shooters regardless of their equipment or background. 3 months after the legendary contest, the atmosphere at Old Pete's shooting range had transformed completely. Word of Elena's remarkable victory had spread throughout the regional shooting community, bringing visitors from hundreds of miles away. who hoped to witness the young marksman who had defeated a military sniper with basic equipment. The range experienced unprecedented business as Elena's story inspired both seasoned shooters and curious newcomers. Elena had initially struggled with the sudden attention and recognition her victory had brought. Media outlets picked up the story, framing it as a classic tale of natural talent overcoming technological advantages. Shooting magazines requested interviews, and equipment manufacturers offered sponsorship deals that would have provided her with the kind of high-end gear that Scope had used in their contest. However, Elena chose to remain true to the principles that had guided her development as a shooter. She declined most sponsorship offers, preferring to continue using her father's rifle and developing her skills through practice rather than equipment upgrades. Her decision earned additional respect from the shooting community and reinforced the lesson that dedication and skill mattered more than expensive gear. The victory had opened doors to competitive opportunities that Elena had never seriously considered. Invitations arrived from prestigious shooting competitions across the country, offering her chances to test her abilities against the finest marksmen in various disciplines. After careful consideration with her father, she decided to accept selected invitations that would challenge her skills without overwhelming her academic commitments. Elena's first formal competition was a regional precision rifle match that attracted some of the most accomplished shooters in the area. Using the same equipment that had served her so well against Scope, she finished in the top 5 among competitors with decades of experience and equipment worth more than her father's annual income. The result validated her abilities and demonstrated that her victory over Scope had not been a lucky accident. Scope himself had undergone a significant transformation following the contest. The defeat had forced him to confront the arrogance and condescension that had characterized his interactions with other shooters. He began to appreciate that marksmanship excellence could emerge from unexpected sources, and that respect should be based on performance rather than equipment or credentials. In a surprising turn of events, Scope approached Elena several weeks after their contest with a request that shocked everyone who knew him. He asked if she would be willing to share some of her techniques and insights, acknowledging that her natural shooting ability had taught him valuable lessons about the fundamentals of marksmanship. The request marked a complete reversal of their original relationship dynamic. Elena graciously agreed to work with Scope, viewing the opportunity as a chance to learn from his extensive experience while sharing her own perspectives on shooting fundamentals. Their training sessions became productive exchanges that benefited both shooters, with Scope's technical knowledge complementing Elena's intuitive understanding of marksmanship principles. The collaboration between Elena and Scope became one of the most talked-about developments in the local shooting community. Observers watched with fascination as the former rivals worked together, sharing techniques and pushing each other to higher levels of performance. Their partnership demonstrated that ego and competitiveness could be channeled into constructive rather than destructive directions. Roberto watched his daughter's growing involvement in competitive shooting with mixed emotions. He was immensely proud of her achievements and the respect she had earned from experienced shooters. However, he also worried that her dedication to shooting might limit her exposure to other experiences and opportunities that were important for a young person's development. Elena sensed her father's concerns and made conscious efforts to maintain balance in her life. She continued to excel academically, understanding that education would provide her with options and opportunities regardless of how far her shooting career might progress. Her ability to manage multiple priorities demonstrated the same discipline and focus that had made her such an exceptional marksman. Old Pete had become something of a celebrity himself as the owner of the range where the famous contest had taken place. Shooting enthusiasts made pilgrimages to visit the facility, where Elena had demonstrated that skill could triumph over expensive equipment. Pete embraced his role as the keeper of the story, ensuring that future generations would understand the lessons that could be learned from that remarkable afternoon. The range had also benefited from increased business as Elena's story attracted new shooters who were inspired by her example. Many were young people who had previously felt intimidated by the perceived expense and complexity of competitive shooting. Elena's victory demonstrated that excellence was achievable through dedication and practice, rather than expensive equipment purchases. Elena established a small teaching program at the range, working with young shooters who showed interest and potential in marksmanship. Her patient instruction and emphasis on fundamentals helped several students achieve remarkable improvement in their shooting abilities. The program became another legacy of her contest victory, ensuring that her influence would extend beyond her own competitive achievements. The story of Elena's victory over Scope became a legendary tale within the shooting community, told and retold with variations that sometimes exaggerated the details, but always preserved the essential message. Young shooters learned that dedication and proper technique could overcome equipment disadvantages, while experienced marksmen were reminded to respect talent regardless of its packaging. Elena's shooting career continued to flourish as she gained experience in various competitive disciplines. She maintained her preference for traditional equipment and techniques, becoming a symbol of the enduring value of fundamental marksmanship skills. Her success inspired equipment manufacturers to develop products that emphasized performance over features, recognizing that serious shooters valued substance over marketing appeal. Years later, when Elena had become a nationally recognized competitive shooter and respected instructor, she would often reflect on the contest that had changed her life. The afternoon when she had faced down Scope's challenge had taught her lessons about confidence, perseverance, and the importance of staying true to one's principles even under pressure. The shooting range where it all began remained a special place for Elena, serving as a reminder of her journey from weekend hobbyist to accomplished competitor. She continued to practice there regularly, often accompanied by students who hoped to learn from her example. The facility had become a shrine to the idea that excellence could emerge from the most unexpected circumstances when combined with dedication, practice, and unwavering determination. The legend of the contest lived on, inspiring new generations of shooters to pursue excellence through hard work rather than expensive shortcuts. Elena's story proved that true marksmanship was about more than equipment or credentials. It was about character, dedication, and the courage to stand up for what you believe in, even when facing seemingly impossible odds.